Tonight's true story doesn't even take place in Appalachia, but it's easily one of the most unsettling true stories I've heard in a long time. The submitter chooses to remain anonymous, but she calls this story Why I Believe in the Paranormal. This happened a few years ago, and I still can't explain what happened. I apologize for the length, but this all happened over the span of multiple days, and I want to provide proper context so you can all understand why we came to the conclusion we did. My family went on a mini vacation for my dad's birthday. We live in Northern California and had decided to take a small trip to a very small beach town off of Highway 1 near an ocean cliffside. When I got out of the car, I immediately felt strange. My brother said he felt a weird vibe from the property as well, but we chalked it up to being in an unfamiliar area so late at night and chose not to say anything to our parents. It was about midnight, so we quickly unpacked and went to sleep. The next morning, I finally got to get a proper look at the whole property, and although I thought it was breathtakingly beautiful, I still couldn't shake the feeling of being deeply unsettled. There was a Hobbit-style structure built into the side of a hill that had a big handwritten sign that stated, "Do not enter." A huge barn workshop that we were told not to enter by the owner of the property, 3 separate rental units, and a flat wooden lookout structure right next to the cliffside that had 0 barriers. My brother and I were staying in the smallest unit. My parents and 2 family friends were staying in the largest unit, and nobody even went inside the last unit. We didn't initially plan on avoiding the last unit altogether, but after the incidents, we all felt like that unit didn't need to be explored. The only strange occurrence that happened on the first day was that my dad and his friends swear they saw a figure in the window of the barn. There was no host staying on the property with us, so it really startled them and led them to investigate. First thing to note is that when they approached the barn, the figure was still in the window, completely motionless. They both thought it could be a tarp or coat rack, considering they didn't note any movement, but still wanted to investigate to make sure. They saw this figure in a window that was positioned near the apex of the roof. So when they walked up to the barn and saw that there was only 1 story, they immediately were very perplexed by what they were seeing. They walked back a few steps to look inside the window again, but now there was nothing there. No figure, no nothing. They both got spooked and tried to investigate further, but all the doors were locked, and they never came up with a proper explanation. During the day, we went on a hike and shopped around the local shops. At one of the stores, they had a variety of jade jewelry. I randomly felt very inclined to buy something. I don't tend to wear a lot of jewelry due to my sensory problems, but I just felt very drawn to buying this bracelet with a large jade gemstone. The storekeeper told me that jade was a protection stone and that it would protect me when I choose to wear it. I immediately put it on and didn't plan on taking it off anytime soon. I found it brought me comfort, knowing I was allegedly protected. This is important context that will make much more sense eventually. That night, we all started talking about the weird vibe of the property and discussed what we thought was causing it. I told everyone a big red flag for me was that my dog refused to enter the unit my brother and I were staying in. He gets separation anxiety and normally would never willingly leave my side, but actively avoided entering the unit. He would stand outside of the unit and watch me instead of sitting with me inside. I dragged him inside a few times, but every time he would start scratching at the door to leave, so I stopped trying. I assumed he maybe wanted to have access to all the family members, but it still felt uncharacteristic for him. In my unit, there was a couch that was positioned right in front of the sliding glass doors that faced the cliffside. I was lounging on that couch while crocheting, attempting to relax, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I was aware my dog was probably outside, but I don't normally feel unsettled by his lurking, so I investigated with my brother. We scanned the area with flashlights and called my dog's name. He came running out of my parents' unit. We brought him back inside and asked them if he had been there long. My mom said he had been in there with them for at least 20 to 30 minutes. I told her I felt like I was being watched through the sliding glass windows, but convinced myself and her that it was probably just anxiety. We all decided to lock up for the night and just went to sleep. The next day was fairly normal, nothing to note until nightfall. I once again was crocheting on that couch and couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I didn't investigate this time. I just kept periodically looking up to make sure I didn't see anyone and continued on crocheting. I ended up staying up much later than my brother. Therefore, I was all by myself with this sickening feeling I just couldn't get rid of. At about 2 a.m., I just couldn't sit there any longer. I honestly felt really scared to attempt to sleep as well, but at least I didn't feel on display in bed. I locked all of the doors and even added a secondary lock to the sliding glass door. I used a wooden pole from a broom to make it so the door physically couldn't open without moving the pole. For context, my bed was positioned right alongside the wall of the adjoining bedroom my brother was staying in and was practically right in front of the stairs. I was not really in a bedroom. There were no doors or walls separating me from the downstairs, more like an open space that had a bed. I got into bed and was doom scrolling when I suddenly heard movement from downstairs. It started with small footsteps, almost childlike, around the kitchen and living room. I could very distinctly hear small thuds that almost sounded like skipping or dancing. Then I heard metal clanking sounds. It was as if someone was holding a metal utensil and dragging it along the surfaces downstairs. Dragging turned to tapping. I was fully frozen with fear at this point, and quite literally had no idea what to do. At no point did I hear any doors open or locks turn, so whatever was downstairs was probably in the house the whole time. I was petrified, just sitting there listening to the metal clank and the small footsteps. It just kept going, and I knew there was absolutely nothing in between me and whatever was making all that racket downstairs. Then the worst happened. I tried to adjust my position in bed, and my phone fell off and into the floor. The sound echoed through the house. Immediately I went to pick it up while simultaneously hearing the footsteps abruptly stop. To my horror, I hear the tiny footsteps running up the stairs. It was the most terrifying moment of my life. I grabbed my pillow and threw it up to my head and just started saying, "Please don't hurt me," repeatedly. I honestly did not want to face whatever this was. I hear the footsteps run all the way up the stairs and right next to my bed. Then I start to feel a pressure on my pillow. Whatever it was potentially trying to suffocate me. I continued to plead into the pillow and found I genuinely couldn't move. I have no idea if I was so scared I literally froze or if something else was stopping me. But nevertheless, I laid there completely hopeless. This continued for a short while until I must have blacked out, because I woke up the next morning in complete shock of what took place the night before, with zero memory of what happened after feeling pressure on my pillow. I ran to my parents' unit to tell them what I experienced, and they too had horrifying experiences the night before. My dad had moved to the couch halfway through the night because he was keeping my mom up with his snoring. My mom woke up a few hours later to who she thought was my dad standing at the foot of the bed. She casually asked what he was doing just standing there, but the figure didn't move. It just stood there watching over her. After realizing it wasn't my dad, she screamed. Once my dad came running in, the figure simply vanished. She told my dad what she saw, and he said that he never even went to sleep because he kept hearing heavy footsteps walking through the house, sometimes sounding like it was right behind him. He said every time he turned to look for who it was, he never saw anything that could explain the footsteps. He couldn't get himself to relax enough to fall asleep, so he just laid there in the dark. Since it was already 4 a.m., they both stayed up watching movies and discussing what they had experienced. My brother and the family friends didn't experience anything of note that night. They all know that we are skeptics and aren't the lying for attention type, so they really don't know what to make of what we claimed. The most bizarre thing that nobody could explain was that my jade bracelet had changed colors. It was a light milky green before, and now there was a large spot on the main stone that was a very dark greenish black color. It wasn't on the surface of the stone either. We tried washing it. It was literally as if the color of the stone had changed. Scientifically speaking, that can happen due to wear, temperature changes, skin oils, or lighting. But I had just bought it, and the color change didn't go away after being brought to different conditions. Spiritually speaking, some believe that stones can change after absorbing negative energy, almost like a verification that it had done its job. I was bombarded with intrusive thoughts and mental imagery that a man lived there and had harmed some children there. I know I was perhaps jumping to conclusions, but it also kind of made some sense. The house was so isolated, and the remote cliff was the perfect secluded spot, far away from prying eyes and unwanted attention. I'm sorry. I'm pretty sure my parents had an encounter with the offender and that I had one with the victim. It didn't even feel like a question at that point. It felt like I just knew deep down that evil things had happened on this property. I might sound crazy, but this was my experience. I think about this experience regularly and don't talk about it much. Most people look at me crazy after sharing, so I just stopped talking about it. It was horrifying, and I most certainly believe in the paranormal now. Now, this one gave me some serious chills, guys. This is a great story. You don't hear too many true first-hand accounts like this anymore, or I don't come across them that often. But thank you, guys. Thank you for the submitter of this story. Great story. Keep sending me your stories and suggestions, guys. That's been Jay's Haunted Appalachia for the night. The addresses to do so are prominently displayed everywhere. So keep Appalachia haunted, y'all.